Hi everybody, my name is Oscar from Hammerfall. You're watching Historias Rockeras.
Dear Oscar, it is a great pleasure and honor for me to be finally interviewing you.
Thank you.
Back in the day, 1996, the world of underground metal was a different animal. Without internet, we may basically think there was some mental power who got everyone together around good metal music that wasn't advertised anywhere. Also, it was a different music world, at least in my opinion. Without enough processing power, underground metal bands were limited sonically as the revolution of digital recording was only sprouting. Underground metal was death and black metal territory. It looks somewhat the Black Album also killed thrash metal for a while, and mainstream heavy metal was basically on the freezer. Melody was slowly returning to metal, and there was a movement in Gothenburg that was flirting with more melody but still being extreme metal. There is a name of a studio, Studio Friedman, and a name of a person, Fredrik Nordstrom. Later in time, he and his studio would be the core of the sound development of a music revolution in sound and style. But with ceremonial oath, as early as '93, you happened to be the first act and release officially produced there. And you share co-production credits, if I'm not wrong.
I think so.
Can you give us a personal glimpse of those times and some history that you lived in that moment?
Well, it was the thing is I've known Fredrik since the '80s. We had his band. His band was called the Snakeskin Cowboys back in those days, and we were rehearsing at the same place. So that's how we got to know each other. And I think this would have been maybe late '91, early '92 that Ceremonial Oath got the record deal. And I think Fredrik has just started working with another studio together with the guy. And so sort of basically it was called Rainy Day / Studio Fredman. So Rainy Day was the owner, the other guy, and Studio Fredman was Fredrik. And they sort of did a collaboration in the beginning. That was his first venture into any kind of recordings, I think. And so we got the deal, and he found out about it somehow, and I don't know exactly how it went about, but he gave us a really good deal. I mean, a good price for. I don't know how many weeks we spent, but 3 or 4 weeks, and we didn't have that much of a recording budget. So it was like a learning experience for both for him and for us. And this turned out to be the first death metal album that he ever produced. He didn't even know what the music style was beforehand. I remember he told me many years later, obviously, but he said that the first time I saw you guys, we came to the rehearsal room and you guys were playing, and we thought somebody was getting killed in there. So we sort of peeked through the keyholes, like we saw you guys. You were at the microphone screaming, and the other guys were banging their heads and thrashing around. And we thought you guys were lunatics. He said he thought we were lunatics because he had no previous knowledge of the music style that was death or thrash metal. So that was
he wasn't a metal guy.
No, not at all. He was more. I mean, he's I guess maybe 5 or 7 years older than I am, or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. He's a bit older anyway. So he was more into rock music, I guess you could say. I mean, he likes metal music, of course, too now. But I don't think he was into metal before that. Not that much, anyway. Not like a strict metal guy, at least.
All right. So it was '93. Is it accurate to say that you were one of the first Swedish metal Gothenburg bands who got signed?
I don't think so, no. I mean, there were, you had At the Gates, and of course Grotesque before that. But there were others, I'm sure. I can't really... I'm sure there were others, but none I mean, obviously, At the Gates made the most out of their name since then. They're the biggest name that came out of this. But I guess we were among the first. I'm not sure about the first, though.
How did you get into metal, and what were your influences back then?
Okay, so I was about 10 years old when I discovered metal, and for me it was a gradual process. I started finding songs that I liked, and I never put them together as now I like this type of music. I'd never thought of it that way. For me, it was just a matter of finding the music that you like, and then after a while I realized, oh wow, I'm listening to a lot of the same type of music, and then I realized what I was doing. But it took me a little while. But that's when I started listening to Kiss, Accept, Judas Priest, those types of bands. Motley Crue, Twisted Sister was a huge influence for me for many, many, many years. Still is to this day, actually. So that's where I started, and that's in the beginning, those were my influences. But when I started going to I don't know, it's called high school. I guess it's some kind of high school. In Sweden, we have a different school system. But from when you're 15, the year that you turn 16, that's when you start if you want to, you can start a 2 or 3 year education. And that's when I met all of these people, the people from At the Gates. Anders Ivers from he played with me in Ceremony and Oath and in Tiamat afterwards. And he played also now with Dark Tranquility. We went to the same class even for 3 years. So that's how I got into the more extreme type of music. Also that I found a lot of friends in these other bands, because I had just started playing in a band maybe a year or two before that. So I wasn't really that wasn't really something I was heavily into until that point, basically, I guess. So that turning point for me definitely was when I was about 16, 17 years old, started in this school, and met a lot of like-minded people, I guess you could say.
And you always were not only a listener, but also somebody who played an instrument from young age, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I played actually trombone for 4 years before I started playing guitar. And this was from I was 10 till I was 14, and that's the whole evolution process for me. Was when I realized that the type of music I'm listening to, the type of music I enjoy, they don't have any trombone, they don't have any brass band or anything like that. So I started looking into playing guitar, and that's when I was 14 when I started playing guitar, and that's basically when I was a part of the first band. And from that point on, we started playing together, me and my friends back then. But it wasn't until a couple of years later when I met the other guys that I became more of something really intentional.
All right, so there was a moment in time that you could, end up playing either with In Flames or Dark Tranquility.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, well, I wouldn't say for sure. Probably not Dark Tranquility, because they were old friends since high school. They grew up together, all of them. But I'm guessing maybe In Flames, it might have been a chance if I was, if I had more, maybe if I was a better guitar player to begin with, but also if I had if I was less stubborn, I guess. I always wanted to have things my way. I was always the main songwriter for every band that I've been in, basically. And I think that's why Jesper also wanted to start In Flames, because he had his vision of what he wanted to do, and there was not room for 5 other strong minds in that vision. So I guess that's how it started for him too. So I'm not sure. I mean, it probably. I don't think I would have been ready for a band like that at that time. Mentally, certainly not, because I was going. Like when I quit Ceremony and Oath was the same year as Jesper formed In Flames. But I wanted to play heavy metal back then. I also wanted to play extreme death metal, which I did with a band called Crystal Age for a couple of years. But I was never into the melodic death metal thing as much. I liked the melodies, but I liked the heavy metal aspect of it much more.
You and Jesper, before In Flames, you were a team. or that is not the case?
Oh no, he played in Ceremonial Oath with us. That's why he started with Ceremonial Oath in 1990. Actually, we had a band called Desecrator, and it was about the time when Jesper joined us that we changed the name to Ceremonial Oath, because another British band had just released an album in 1990 from a band called Desecrator. So we can have the same name as another band. So that's when he started playing with me, and then he played in Ceremonial Oath until I left the band, and about 6 months later he left the band as well, I think, or maybe a year later. I don't remember exactly, but so that's how we met each other for the first time.
Okay, so in what moment Hammerfall as a project comes in? You know, you play death metal. Well, you just said that you wanted to play heavy metal, but how come Hammerfall as a project comes together? Why? How? And of course, we do.
Well, the thing was, I was in Ceremonial Oath, and I was writing, I guess 80% of the music or something like that. The music was going in the direction of more heavy metal with screaming vocals, and that's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something like a real heavy metal band, even if it was 93. And like you said earlier, the music scene was way different. Heavy metal was in the freezer, I believe you said, and that was a pretty good way of describing it, actually, because that's what it felt like, But I didn't really care about that, because I wanted to play the music I wanted to play. It's always been the same with me. I'm a bit strong-willed, I guess, strong-headed, I guess you could say. Stubborn is another good word for it. So things like that, it didn't really matter to me. So that's, but I also was realistic enough to understand that even though I had formed Hammerfall, we were playing, we didn't do all that much. There wasn't that much to do for a band like that, of that type. We didn't really think that was gonna get us anywhere. And I also still had the passion for the technical, brutal death metal that I really liked, the fast death metal kind of stuff that we played in Crystal Age, and so I kept Hammerfall and Crystal Age going at the same time. But basically, what it was for me was that when, Hammerfall, the type of heavy metal, or let's put it this way, the influences that I got from writing the music of Hammerfall were a lot of the same influences for Ceremonial Oath or Crystal Age. I never stopped listening to the music I started once. I'm that kind of person. If I really like something, I never stop liking it. If I really love it, it's never gonna go away from me. And that was the same with heavy metal. Even if I was playing technical death metal or much more aggressive style of music, my main source of inspiration always came from the heavy metal foundation that I grew up with. Of course, I added other bands to it as well. Bands like Slayer and Morbid Angel and Pestilence and stuff like that. But and Possessed, of course, and Death, obviously. Bands like that. But heavy metal was also a big part of the mix, even if I was writing different music. But with Hammerfall, I realized, okay, I want to play heavy metal on the side. I really want to do this, so I'm going to do it no matter what. And that's why I kept both bands going for a while. And then Crystal Age sort of just fizzled out. We never said, all right, let's not play anymore. Now, band's over. We never said that. We recorded an album, but it took so long for the album to actually come out that we all lost interest. And by that time, I already had Hammerfall. I think by that time, Joachim was in the band already, I think. Maybe it was, overlapping by a couple of months or not. But we're talking now early 96. So from that point on, I knew that, okay, I'm done with death metal now. I love playing it, but this is what I really want to do. It has been what I wanted to do since I was a kid. So that was an easy thing to do. But having said that, with Hammerfall, nobody ever expected anything out of this. You have to understand that we didn't see a future for this. We just did it because we loved to play heavy metal music. There was never any 20 years from now we're going to release 11 albums, we're going to sit here or whatever. I've never thought of it that way. I didn't think of anything other than I want to play the music that I love. Basically, that's what it was. Okay,
and who were your partners in crime?
Well, from the very beginning, it was just me. I remember because I was really mad and angry at the Ceremonial Oath guys, because they basically told me either you quit or you're fired.
Okay.
And I was really mad because I saw it as my band, not in the sense that I decide everything, but in the sense that since I was writing all the music, or most of it anyway, all the lyrics, I was singing, lead guitar playing, and guitar as well, of course. It felt like I was thrown out of my own band, basically. And I was really pissed at the guys because there was a difference of opinion where ceremonial musically we're supposed to go in what direction we're supposed to go in. I was going one direction, the other guys were going in another direction. So it's kind of now, looking back at it, of course, it's the obvious thing to do, but I still was really hurt, because these were my friends. We grew up together in the last couple of years. So anyway. When Hammerfall was formed, I played with some friends, and I broke my arm actually in just in a stupid accident, and I was gone I couldn't play guitar for about 6 months, and during that time, that's when I met Frederick, who is bass player of Hammerfall right now. He was also in this band called Crystal Age, so that's how we started playing together. And then when I got better and I could start playing again, Jesper was also interested in joining me in Hammerfall, because I asked him already after when I quit Ceremonial Oath, do you want to play with melodic metal with me? Because I knew he was one of the very few people I knew that really liked it, But he said, okay, I have In Flames now. He just started that one. I have also Ceremonial Oath. But once he was out of Ceremonial Oath, he was free for Hammerfall. So that's how it started with him and me. I already had written some songs, and we started writing songs together from that point on, and played live a couple of times. We had people in the band. Basically, the ones we asked to be in the band were people that we knew also liked melodic metal and weren't afraid to admit it, because everybody didn't do that back in those days. So we had Mika Stanne on vocals, from Dark Tranquility. And we also had, the bass player in the beginning was Johan from In Flames, and the guitar player was Niklas Sundin from Dark Tranquility.
So I remember everything was extreme metal, as we were mentioning back then. And when Hammerfall came out through Nuclear Blast, basically a death metal record label at that time, this was a release which was offered to hard music listeners, to underground metalheads. The magic of that is that the community, that extreme metal community, embraced and praised Hammerfall Glory to the Brave and made it one of the top selling CDs in Nuclear Blast, and also for underground metal in general. So a few months later, there were other melodic bands everywhere. So we think Hammerfall also helped catalyze a paradigm change in the industry. Is this accurate? What are your reflections about it?
Yeah. I mean, it's easy for me to sit here now 22 years later and say, well, we did this and we did that. But the only thing we really did was believe in ourselves and the music that we played. And we didn't really listen to anybody else's opinion about that. And that's why Hammerfall sounds the way it does in the beginning, because we absolutely loved the music we were playing. But we didn't have any ambitions like to tour the world or anything. Even when we had the record deal, the first record deal that we got was with a Dutch label called Vic Records, and this was a really small label. We were just happy to record an album, basically, and Glory to the Brave was actually recorded for Vic Records. But before the album was released, Nuclear Blast found out about it, wanted to license it, which they did for the first 30,000 copies or whatever it was. I don't remember. Because they believed in it. They thought it was a fun thing to do as well. But again, Hammerfall, the members had no ambitions. Yeah, we had no plans on world domination or anything like that.
And after the 30,000 copies, what happened?
Well, then they signed us, or sort of bought Hammerfall from Big Records. They bought the rights to Glory to the Brave. And when I say they bought it, I mean Hammerfall bought it, because it's always like that where labels, you get they pay the money, but it comes out of your advance later. So I guess you could say we bought ourselves. But after that, we were a Nuclear Blast band for 17 years, I believe.
Now, 20 years later, you're a legendary power metal band. But back in the day also, there were some frowning about it, right? There was some criticism about Hammerfall. But can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, of course. Hammerfall has never been a power metal band. I don't think power metal, as you hear today, did not exist when we came around. We're a heavy metal band from day one and has never called us anything other than that. The thing with power metal is that that's what people started calling this movement, with fast and happy melodies, fast drumming and happy melodies that started coming around at like the very end of the 90s, early 2000s. And I've never felt any part of that, really. You know, Hammerfall is a heavy metal band because we started out as that one when everybody else was basically figuratively spitting in our faces about heavy metal. It's a bullshit genre, something you can't play heavy metal anymore. Nobody wants to listen to that shit. But we said we don't care. You know, fuck you if you don't want to listen to it. We just want to play the music that we love, and the music that we love is heavy metal. So that's why I'm a bit. I don't like the label power metal, because when Hammerfall started, the term power metal was used for bands like Jack Panzer or Omen or Sabotage. You know, the U.S. power metal was what it was called back then. So I feel no kinship with that at all, really. But anyway, no, never mind. So yeah, so what happened was, when Glory to the Brave was released and Legacy of Kings afterwards, we sort of started to get a lot of followers. A lot of people seemed to be, wow, this, you know, heavy metal I used to listen to when I was younger, I really like it still. For whatever reason they stopped listening to it, but now they sort of rediscovered it again. But it was still mostly people our own age, which at that point was about 25, 30, you know, something like that. It wasn't until Renegade came out that the younger generation started to get to open their eyes and ears to heavy metal again, and that was a lot thanks to Renegade for us. The album Renegade, and the single, and the video, definitely at Renegade. But also from Iron Maiden, the Bruce Dickinson came back to the band in the same year. It was a huge movement going on back then, and all of a sudden the younger generation, who was not interested in heavy metal anymore, or interested in heavy metal up until that point, started to get into it, because it was all over TV and stuff in Sweden, for example. And that created some sort of resentment among some people. The true metal people gave us a lot of shit for that, just because. And I don't know. It's just weird that how I don't understand why people in certain types of people feel a need to voice their displeasure over something, rather than tell people that we like this. You know, I love this, and instead of saying people, oh, I fucking hate this, whatever it is, you know. And that's so typical. Metal fans are great in a lot of ways, and this whole narrow-mindedness, and I count myself among these as well now. You know, people who are just this way and no other way. But when you have people like that, the passion and the dedication, it's really easy to lose track of the big picture. And I'm guilty of this as well myself many times, but not in the same way, because this whole backlash, I guess, that came for Hammerfall culminated 2 years later in a brutal assault on Joachim in a bar, which was like, even that was totally unexpected for most people. And I think a lot of people who previous to that said that Hammerfall sucks, blah blah blah, it was more like a fun thing to say. After that, they realized, oh wait a minute, okay, I don't like the music, but you know, you don't have to resort to violence. So it was a bit of a difficult time, but at the same time, Hammerfall was going like this all the, you know, straight. You know, we didn't really have time to stop and think about anything like that. We just did our thing like we always have done.
When you say the true metal people, who are you talking about?
When I say true metal people, I mean the people who claim to know what true metal is. I've always said since this whole thing started that true metal for me is what I love the most. True metal for you is what you love the most. That's the true metal for you. It's just bullshit that somebody else gets to or thinks they get to decide what music other people should listen to. And that's the whole thing with this whole bullshit, that people don't like Hammerfall. If you don't like it, then don't listen to it. It doesn't, this goes against the whole spirit of heavy metal for me, which is live your life according to your own rules and make yourself happy. That's the spirit of heavy metal for me. You live your life and you decide what's good for you. And all of a sudden you have these people who are true metalheads. They love heavy metal, but they also at the same time want to tell other people what they can and can't listen to. And that's where the hypocrisy comes in. And that was what angered me a lot.
So, okay, they say you're a biker, a motorcycle biker, and that you have had several accidents. Is that true?
Not several. I had one really bad one. When was that? 2003, so 16 years ago. I was going about 70 miles an hour, and I mean 70 kilometers an hour, rather, not miles, kilometers. I sort of came basically to a full stop right in 1 second. I smashed into a car that was standing still on the highway or freeway, whatever. Not the freeway, on the road, trying to make a left turn, and I didn't see it in time, so I just crashed right into it. But the thing was, I was wearing only shorts and a tank top and an open helmet as well. And if normally when you crash your motorcycle, you crash into something, and then the person, goes flying and skidding on the asphalt, and then you get all these burns and shit. You don't have any skin left on your arms and legs if you're not wearing protection, which I wasn't at the time. But I was so lucky because I went right into the car and then sort of smashed my head into the back windscreen and bounced out again. And instead of just flying away, I bounced out again and landed on the asphalt right next to the car. So that I broke my arm pretty badly. I had some bruises and cuts all over my face. I think a couple of months later, I had some. No, it was my ear. I was just itching or scratching my ear. It's like, oh, what the fuck is this? And one of these, little square glass pieces from the windshield came out months later. I'm not kidding. It was really strange. But that's the only accident I ever had on the motorcycle. But that was a really bad one. We were at the end of a tour, but we still had to cancel a couple of shows. And one of them was the next day, I believe. Maybe the 2 days later or the next day. It was the biggest show we ever done in Sweden. Oh. It was a free show outdoors for the whole city. It's been posters all over the city. It was organized by the city government, so it's a really big thing. Everybody was going to go there, sorry, I fucked that up by crashing my motorcycle. It's basically what happened. My arm was, I didn't realize, I just bam, I didn't have time to react. And then I walked out of the accident. My brother has told me all this afterwards because he was in the car right behind me, so he witnessed everything firsthand. So he parked the car and went to help me. And afterwards, he told me that I came walking towards him, because my first thought, and this sounds ridiculous, but that's actually true, because this show was so big that we were going to do the Hammerfall show, that my first thought was, oh fuck, I hope I didn't fuck this up now for the show. So I lifted my arms. I lifted first the right arm. It's like, oh yeah, no problem here, looks good. And then I lifted the left arm. And instead of standing up like that, it was just hanging like this, was just stuck in with the skin. And because it's called a butterfly break, when you have one piece of bone here and one piece of bone there, and then two butterfly wings on the sides. That's basically, so the arm was completely off. And I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks. I had a cast for 2 months, maybe, not that long, maybe 1.5 months, but it was a long process to get back to playing shape again. It took me a while also because I was worried that, because when I broke my right arm, like I said, that was in 1993, so it was a long time ago. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any, I wanted to play guitar. I wanted to play in the band, but I wasn't depending on it in the same way that I was in 2003. That was my livelihood, my career, basically. So when I was sort of recuperating, went to the physiotherapist and stuff, I was really worried, and I took things slow, and I really wanted to make sure that I can come back and be as good as I was before. And I was also worried that I might not, because it was a pretty bad break. And I remembered from 10 years earlier that I had problems playing guitar. I still have to this day. It's difficult to explain, but I can't really. Never mind. There were some problems that made me adjust my guitar playing back from 1993. So 2003, I was worried that the same thing was going to happen, but it didn't, luckily. So I was back to normal in about 6 months. But I kept my motorcycle for the longest time. I drove it many times, but over the years I drove it less and less, and I actually sold it last year, so I don't have it anymore.
Wow, that experience helped you in your inspiration. It changed in some way your approach to music. Did you express all that anywhere?
Good question. I mean, the album that we wrote after that was Chapter 5, Unbent, Unbowed, Unbroken. And that album has some songs that, because I remember when I wrote that album, and when I started writing music, I wasn't sure if what's going to happen, because it's been so long since we did this. And also I had this kind of traumatizing experience in between. But I was just happy that I was back to normal. I was so happy that I could perform and do the things I wanted to do with the guitar once I started getting back in shape, basically playing shape again. So for me, it was more a case of feeling fortunate that nothing worse happened, basically. And that's what I took with me to the songwriting.
How does a band keep being relevant for more than 20 years? I mean, I can see your 3 first recordings were easy cake, you were at the top, but with the arrival of the rest of the melodic panorama, Hammerfall had to also embark in a quest, because you have been looking for a sound. I remember, for example, Renegade, you went to the US to record with Mr. Wagner, and I want to know, what are your reflections about Hammerfall career after Renegade until today? How do you see that?
It's difficult to answer, because what I think you're getting at is that we had some kind of long-term plan, like this is what we're doing or whatever, and it really was never a case of that. For us, it was a matter of with Renegade, for example, why we went to Nashville to record with Michael Wagner was because he recorded Balls to the Wall. He recorded all the or maybe it wasn't Balls to the Wall. Now I might be mistaken, but he recorded Accept anyway. He recorded bands that we loved. He did some great productions, and he was even in Accept at one point, right? Early stages, maybe even before they were Accept, but the band that became Accept after that. I think maybe he and Wolf for a while before all the other guys came on or something. So whatever. So it was, for us, it was a cool thing to record with the guy who recorded our heroes. He worked he did the first Motley Crue album, Too Fast for Love. He did that one, but not the one that ended up on Elektra, but the one that they released themselves, the leather recordings or whatever they call it. Before that, he also worked with Ozzy Osbourne and Metallica, and he worked with so many big names. That's why we wanted to try something new, basically something that might enhance our sound a little bit. But for our point of view, for Hammerfall's standpoint, we've always been heavily involved in like a lot of bands, especially in the 80s, of course. But some bands just came to the recordings with a bunch of ideas, and then they all, together with the producer, put together the songs and sort of created the sound of the album. And that's never been our style. I mean, we write the music beforehand, we go deep into it, we try to improve every little detail that we can, and try to make it as complete as possible before we start the recordings. And that means it's not that much space left for a producer to put his fingerprints on it, really. I mean, what we really have needed throughout the years is a great technician. And of course, a producer can come up with great ideas, like change this into that, and what if you do this instead, and whatever. And of course, that's what people have done. But we have never been one of those bands that come into a recording session and being dependent on the producer. So what we have been dependent on is a guy that can set a great sound for us more than anything else, and of course guide us and coach us through the recording, obviously. But that's what what we have been trying to do. I mean, after Michael Wagner came Charlie Bauerfeind for 4 albums, I believe. And it was great working with Charlie in a lot of ways. It was also really, really demanding and really taxing on mentally as well as physically. And from Infected on, we started recording things ourselves, because Pontus he's also a producer of albums, and he knows a lot of the studio equipment. He's really good at Pro Tools and stuff like that. So he's also been, thanks to Pontus, we've been able to record a lot of the things ourselves from that point on, and that has created a much more stress-free atmosphere in the studio. I mean, Fredrik Nordström has been involved, of course, but on the day-to-day operations of the last 3 albums have all been us and Fredrik sort of overseeing it, maybe setting the sound, and we send him some stuff. This is where we're going. What do you think of that? But more or less doing the things ourselves, and that has helped to. And that's exactly what we have needed all the time, all along. I mean, there's no way we could have done this without Pontus or before Pontus, because we didn't have the knowledge to do it. But now we have Pontus, and he has knowledge, so that's where we're going. And I think the last 3 albums have been really fun to record, more fun than anything else previously, I think.
Nice. You stayed many years with Nuclear Blast.
Yes.
Revolution album is one of the greatest Hammerfall's in Hammerfall's history, with certain return to roots and many aspects, but also including great songs. That was your last album with them. What happened?
Well, yeah, nothing really happened. It was more a case of like, we started talking about the next album and what do you want to do and how do you see Hammerfall. And by then they had so many other bands that they sort of took us for granted. I think they knew that, or they thought they knew that they were never going to leave. Hammerfall's never going to leave. So we don't have to put so much effort into anything anymore, because it sells itself basically. And Hammerfall didn't want to do that. We didn't want to just, level out. We wanted to keep growing and keep, like a plant, you grow in different directions. Wherever the sun is, that's where you're going. So we started talking to other labels, and we started talking to Napalm, and they said all the right things. Made us feel valuable. In a way that maybe Nuclear Blast didn't, and again, let me just say, Nuclear Blast never did anything wrong. It was never like, oh yeah, fuck those guys. We're still really good friends with them. It was, for us, it was a matter of growth, really. To be challenged to do something new, to be a big fish in a small pond rather than a small fish in a big pond, for example. Because Napalm was and is a much smaller label, obviously. So that's really the reason.
Tell us about Dominion. You have just released an album, the new Hammerfall album. This is the second with the Napalm?
Yes.
What's the story behind it and the meaning of the project, of the concept, if there's one?
No, there's no concept. We haven't done a concept album yet, and I doubt that we ever will. It's we leave that for the masters like Alice Cooper and King Diamond to do that. We started writing songs quite early for Dominion. Normally when an album is recorded and finished and everything is done, I'm so sick of the shit, I don't want to hear anything about it. Because it's been such an intense period of work that I need a couple of months to just, back off a little bit. With Dominion, or rather with Built to Last, nowadays you can't really do that. You can't take a couple of months off before the recording to write songs. There's no way. We just can't. You can't do what we did in the 10, 15 years ago, which was, have 6 to 8 months, no shows anywhere, just dedicated to writing songs, basically. And we can't do that anymore. We need to be out on the road much more than we used to. And also, of course, all the streaming services and stuff means that you sell less albums, even though the streaming means that more people listen to it. you don't get in as an artist. You don't get in, as much money as you used to. So we need to be out playing shows, and also the world is getting smaller, you know, or bigger depending on the way you look at it. But there are more places that we need to go, more territories that we need to go. Because on Built to Last, we went to North America twice. We went to North America 4 times in 20 years or something before that. So for us, it's a big thing to go there 2 years in a row. So there are territories that we need to go to. We can't really do that 6 to 8 months break before, you know, to songwriting break anymore. And I wasn't ready for that when Built to Last was done. So the last couple of months before the recordings of Built to Last was really stressful. I hated it. I didn't enjoy any of it. And normally I really enjoy writing songs. I love what I do. I really love the music that I write. But for Built to Last, I didn't have a chance to savor it. I didn't have a chance to listen to it, to understand the music. It was because it was so stressful. I needed to finish the songs before the recording. I just finished the song and then shipped it off to Joachim and then worked on the next one. And I desperately wanted to avoid that for the next album. So I started writing songs a lot earlier. And I also started writing songs on tour, which has, if you asked me this, you know, 2-3 years ago, I would have said never in my wildest dreams will I ever ever do that. I can't do that. It's impossible for me. But what I didn't really count on was that being on stage is a really big adrenaline rush, and you can actually channel that adrenaline rush into writing songs. So this is what I did. I brought my sort of songwriting kit, which basically is a small guitar, a laptop with Pro Tools on it, and an interface, and that I can bring anywhere with me. I got a guitar called a traveler's guitar, which is small enough to fit in a suitcase, so I can bring that anywhere. I brought that on vacations with my family too, and I think I wrote about half of at least 50 to 60% of my things for the album I wrote outside of my home, which is, you know, I thought I could write only inside of my home. Everything should have been written there. But this was a great way of expanding your horizons and challenging yourself a little bit. And I felt really good about that. It turned out fantastic. I was very productive. So it was a beautiful experience this time.
Nice. If you want to have an introduction to us, pick 3 songs. If we would like to discover Dominion album, give us 3 tracks you would let us hear first.
It's a really cool question. I just the thing with this album in particular is that all of the songs are very different. You can't say that this is a song that sounds like any other song. I mean, sure, there are fast songs, but they all differ in context, really. But I think 3 songs that describe the album well are Never Forgive, Never Forget, We Make Sweden Rock, and just to get the balance, the ballad, Second to One.
We have seen so many videos of Hammerfall killing it in the circuit of Summer Festival that it's easy to think the new album and the tour will be a landmark. How do you feel so far about this new season for Hammerfall?
Well, I think Hammerfall has never been better live than we are right now. This is the best version of Hammerfall that you've ever seen, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But we have done more shows in the last couple of years than we've done ever before, and that's, of course, you play a lot, you get synced together a lot as well. But it's also a matter of the level of intensity that we bring. We had a little bit of a break before Revolution. We took an 18-month break just to recharge the batteries a little bit, and that's needed. You know, the band that you see now, while we mostly consist of the same people, on stage it's a totally different experience now than 10 years ago. So we bring the energy a lot, and that's because it's so much fun. You know, it was was getting, not, I wouldn't say boring, but it was getting less fun for a while, and that's why we took the break before Revolution. And since then, you know, all the things that we've done have been really fun, and it's really fun to play in a band again. And I don't think if we didn't take that break, we probably wouldn't have been here anymore. You know, because then just going into back into the studio recording a new album, it would have been probably the death of Hammerfall. And instead, we took a break and then came back really energized again. And I think that's what's a heavy metal show. That's an important aspect of a heavy metal show. Is the energy, the interaction with the fans, the feeling that everybody is in this together and we're all having the time of our lives. And that's what we're trying to recreate. Like I like to say, a heavy metal party every night. You know, that's what we try to do with the shows. And it seems like in the last couple of years that people who come to the shows, they know this. They know what to expect. They are there because they want to see Hammerfall. They want to get a good time, want to have a good time, and they want to get into the show. And that makes it all the easier for us on stage. It makes it a lot the experience much better for everybody.
Musically, and if you want to share a bit further, but first off, musically, what is the difference from that Oscar Dronjak today, 2019, and that guy sitting in 93 in front of the control desk in the console recording your first album?
Night and day in many ways. It was actually recorded in September 1992 already. It just came out in 93. I mean, in the core, I'm probably the same person I've always been. You know, I think I didn't change that much in that respect. But as far as maturity, it's night and day. You know, I was 20 years old at that time, but I felt like 14 until I turned 40. Basically, you know, that's been my just the way I've been. You know, I've been feeling a lot younger and a lot more immature, because those things go together. If you feel young, it's great. But if you also are immature, it's not so great. But you can't really have one without the other, I don't think. So it's been, for me, a long road since then. And I'm sure that there are many things I would recognize and about myself and feel are similar. But as a whole, you know, that this is almost 30 years, not quite 27, 28 years ago. But I think that the young version of me would be really proud of what I've accomplished.
Do you read?
A lot, yes.
Okay, I heard that you have a song inspired by Game of Thrones Before the Hype, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, we have. We have song titles that I took from the song of Ice and Fire many years before it became a television series. So yeah, I read the books, all of them that were available before, years before the series. So we had our first. I mean, the first album where anything showed up was Chapter 5, because it's called Unbent, Unbowed, Unbroken, which is something I took from that. The series. This is actually the words of one of the houses. I think it's House Tyrell, House Martell, maybe. I can't remember now. It was unbent, unbroken, unbowed, I think. Or I just flipped the words around. But yeah, so yes, for sure. We had many song titles. Dark Wings, Dark Words is another one before that, and a lot of inspiration from that, from the books before it became series.
All right, so if you're a good reader, shoot us 3 books. Read this, 1, 2, 3.
One book that I didn't. I mean, I've read the author of A Song of Ice and Fire is called George R.R. Martin, and he's written I don't know how many books, many books, and I read almost all of them. But I found one last year which I hadn't read, or 2 years ago maybe. It's called Tough Voyaging. TUF Voyaging. It's a science fiction, it was extremely good. I didn't have any high hopes because I didn't know what it was really when I found it, but it's one of those books I couldn't put it down. It was really, really well written, as almost everything he's done is. So Tough Voyaging, definitely check it out. I'm reading one right now, which is called, I believe, The Wanderer, I think. I can't remember the author now. It was one of those things. I have a Kindle because that's so easy. You know, when you're going tour for a while, it's easy to have just, you know, a couple of books inside of a little e-reader instead of a big stack of books, basically. But that one, I only read about 10% of it, but it seems like this is going to be a really, really good one. Yeah, so, I read a lot. I mean, it's so much better. The main reason for me was I like to read books. I've always read books a lot, but it felt to me that 2 or 3 years ago maybe that whenever I was bored, I started looking at the phone and Facebook or whatever it was, social media bullshit, and just nothing really of value at all. I was just reading bullshit, and I realized, if I'm going to read something, I might as well read something that makes any sense to me. So that's why I started. I bought a Kindle. I read it all the time now, and I was just reading it when you called. Actually, the first time I was reading The Wanderer book. It's a new one. It was for me. It just showed up in the recommended for you books. I check those out sometimes, and I just read about it a little bit. This seems like something I would enjoy. I'm a huge Stephen King fan, and this book had a lot of comparisons to him, and normally that's not always a great thing, because you can't do, if you do Stephen King is Stephen King. Only he can do that, obviously, But if you are inspired by him or in the same vein, I'm always interested, I've been interested in that style a lot, and I read some books that were okay, but I read some really good ones too. And one book that I didn't know, I was searching for books in the style of Stephen King, like Googling, and this author called Joe Hill came up. It's like, okay, well, why not? I'll try him. So I bought one of his books. I think it was called Horns, like horns, and I read it just for a couple of pages, basically. I said, wow, this is really Stephen King-ish. I love it, and it was a really great book. It's even I remember even thinking halfway through, this is like Stephen King, but modern, not the 80s Stephen King, but made in 2019 or 17 or whatever it was, the kind of year I read it. And then afterwards, I looked him up, because I wanted to buy some more books for me. This was a really good book. I discovered he had a couple of more, and I also discovered that he was Stephen King's son. So it figures, but the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in certain cases, I guess, right? But it was a really good book, so that's my first suggestion.
But what about movies? Do you like them, or you're not a movie guy?
No, I watch a lot of movies. I tend to enjoy TV series more, just because if they're done well, they're like a huge long movie. Because there's only so much you can do in 2 hours, with a movie. If you have 10, 13 episodes, you can do a lot more. But I do watch a lot of movies, yes. Because one of my all-time favorite movies that I've ever watched is King Kong, and it's the old one from 1933. I have a thing for big apes, or big monsters or whatever, and especially with King Kong, it's such a sad story. That's actually the last time I really cried was when I saw that movie, because it's so damn sad when he dies at the end. So yeah, King Kong for sure.
Let's go to the very last question.
Yes.
Your top 3 metal albums.
Oh, man, that's difficult. One that I have to mention is Screaming for Vengeance, I think. Judas Priest, obviously. One of the first albums I discovered, but still to this day one of the best ones. Oh, yeah. And I think Balls to the Wall has to be. I mean, just for what it made me discover and realize I was into accept and heavy metal. That's a really good. For me, it has a good feeling. It needs to be in there, and also it's one of my all-time favorite albums. So yes, for sure. third one is more difficult. I guess I would go with Louder Than Hell with Manowar. That one had also a huge impact on me when it came out, just because this was in the middle of the 90s, 96 I believe, and like we talked about earlier, the way people viewed heavy metal back then was not favorable in any way, if they even viewed it at all. You know, they all thought it was just bullshit and kind of children's play, whatever, because the grunge or the extreme aggressive metal was all the rage back then. So when Louder Than Hell came out, and the song like The Gods Made Heavy Metal, and they saw that it was good, they said to play it louder than hell. We promised that we would. That's just something that was an arrow straight into my heart. That's exactly how I felt at that time. And I felt also like I was more or less alone in this, you know, more or less. And then when that album came out, I realized, okay, there are a few more that are like us. So that's my third one.
Wow. Oscar, we've been talking 1 hour. Thank you so much for your time, man.
No problem at all. Yeah, I'm happy we could do it despite me forgetting about it in the beginning. So that is good. Bye.